Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. Come on in the room. Good morning, good morning. If you're here, say hi and let us know you're here. Getting this going for Carol's Tuck. You're following us. Good to see us this morning. Thank you for those who are already in the room. Looks good. Thank you. Thank you. All right, all right. Let's get started. Good morning, everyone. I am Reverend Dr. Tammie Denyse, and I am joined this morning with my colleague, my friend, but most importantly, my sister, Reverend Dr. Tawana Angela Davis, more lovingly referred to as Dr. Tad. Welcome to this important and necessary conversation around love that shouldn't hurt. Carrie's Touch is a breast cancer organization whose target audience is Black women surviving and thriving through and beyond a breast cancer diagnosis. And in October, we are Pink Everything. But today, we're taking a pause on the pink to acknowledge another awareness that happens in the month of October, and that is domestic and or intimate partner violence. And for last year was our first time ever having this conversation, and Dr. Tad very lovingly interviewed me as I shared publicly in a public forum my mom's story of being a victim of domestic violence and her abuser ultimately taking her life. So this conversation will be intense. And so, a little bit of housekeeping. If you're watching this conversation and you are in a vulnerable situation and you want to reach out to us, you can send us a direct message right here on Facebook and on YouTube. You can send us a direct message. I think we can do that. I might not be telling the truth about YouTube, but if that is not the case, please reach out to us online at info@carriestouch.org. That you'll see a ticker that's going across the bottom of the screen today. And always, always, always do what is best for you to keep you safe. I'm going to say that again. Do what's best for you to keep you safe. If you happen to want to put something in the chat and you might be concerned that someone might see it in your name in the chat, change your name for today and just put anonymous on there, and that is 100% fine as well. Dr. Tad, did I miss any housekeeping rules?
I would just add the National Domestic Violence Hotline is also a resource in an emerging situation, an emergency, or a question that you might have in the moment. 1-800-799-7233, or you can go on to their website, thehotline.org, because your safety is our priority. And we are here to offer this safe and sacred space to you to be informed, to be protected, and to be in community with us. Thank you, Dr. Tam.
Well, thank you for that. And to our support team, will you put that National Domestic Hotline number in the chat so that folks can refer back to it as well? Okay, let's get started, Dr. Tad. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, all right. First and foremost, just sending you mad love. Mad love. I'm gonna stand up and give y'all a twirl of my shirt for today. And Dr. Tad, I guess you can do the same if you want to show yours as well. Today, our conversation is about love shouldn't hurt. And we came to this conversation from, like I said, my mom's experience with domestic violence. And people often ask me, who is Carrie? And I get to tell them who my beautiful, brilliant mother was. And I also get to tell them that she died not from breast cancer. And I talk about love. And if you're in a situation that love is painful and is potentially deadly, reconsider that relationship, seek help, and safely create a plan to get out. Dr. Tat, I consider myself I've always considered myself to be a product of domestic violence because I watched my mom, daily at the hands of her abuser. And recently I said, I was in that every single day for the first 11 years of my life. And I think I'm going to say that I'm also a survivor of domestic violence as well, because I had to endure that. And I had to endure that in my teen years, my early, young adult years, and now in this season of my life, really trying to make meaning of why I'm choosing to do this publicly. Can you talk to us a little bit about these labels? We've got domestic violence, we've got intimate partner violence, and a victim. And for some people, that's offensive and oppressive. And then we use survivor. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of these labels, what they mean, why we use them?
Sure. And when you said that you were able to identify not as a product, but as a survivor and being able to name that, like my heart
Mhm,
just jumped out of my chest.
mhm,
That is such a huge moment to be able to identify. It's not necessarily defining who one may be, but it is an identifier and it is a way to identify something
mhm,
so that you can fix it, address it, heal it, move through it, seek the proper help. You're not going to go to an oncologist if you have
mhm,
a toothache. So it's so important to name those things so that, we think of the law of attraction, right? So we name those things, and next thing you know, you see a commercial about that very thing that you're naming,
mhm,
or a friend of yours will call and say, hey, I was thinking about you, and you end up having a conversation about that very thing that
mhm,
you were just able to be released from. It's a
mhm,
form of freedom. It's a form of liberation to be able to name it. So that's the importance of it. So thank
mhm.
you for identifying and being able to work through, because we're ever evolving. So
Right.
you went from identifying as a product of, a
Mhm,
result of, to
mhm.
like, whoa, wait a minute. I
Right.
experienced this and I too am a survivor.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That makes me a little emotional because thank you for that. And it just happened. I didn't do anything special. It was just in a moment that I was going back through reliving, in preparation for this, mentally and emotionally reliving some of those days and moments and, of my early childhood. And I was like, wait a minute. So, a lot of times I've talked to other women and men in this situation that don't even realize that they are in an abusive relationship. Can you speak to that personally, or yeah?
Yeah, I can speak to that personally. We call we are sisters,
Right.
full stop.
Full stop.
And how we became sisters is
Mhm.
through our dear mother,
Yes.
Carolyn Habersham.
Yes.
And
Shout out to Mother. Just put full stop. Shout out to Mother. Mother, I know you are on the line on Facebook. You're in the comments. Just shout out to you. Thank you for being who you are in both of our lives and just being a godsend. So I'm sorry, sister, but I
no,
had to pause.
appropriate and well deserved and
Mhm.
honor. Yes. So we were in seminary together, and I was married to um, my husband was abusive, and I paused because I am learning this liberative language. Like,
Mhm.
this was not my abuser. Like,
Mhm.
he was
Come
abusive.
through. Yes.
So sometimes I'll pause and be like, I'm not owning that. Nah. So, but I thought there were so many other layers to the our complex relationship, whether it
Mhm.
was mental disorder or upbringing or, environment, community
Mhm.
choices, life choices. And I was sitting in seminary, and our beloved professor, Reverend Dr. Carolyn McCrary, brought in a guest. She was a pastoral care professor.
Mhm.
She brought in a guest, and he talked about domestic violence, and he talked about this wheel and all this other stuff. And I just burst into tears because I said, that's me. And I had no idea that that was me, even amid the violence,
Mhm.
uh, mentally, physically, that was me. So it was, for whatever reason, I just didn't know. I didn't grow up in a domestic violence household. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, I grew up around a lot of violence,
Yeah.
growing up in Harlem and Wagner projects, and the crack
Right.
epidemic.
Right.
But domestically, intimate partner, I had no point of reference. So that was a point of reference for
Wow.
me. And then I thought I was going through hell before. The hell began thereafter.
Hmm. Wow, 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 wow. Can you say more about what that means? Because I was just going to say, so what was that awakening? We live, right? A lot of Black folks, we grew up poor, and we say we didn't know we was poor until somebody told us we were poor, right? And then you all of a sudden start living a different way, living a different life because you have a new understanding. How was that for you? Okay, you had this awakening, and then you said, and then the hell began.
Yeah, because we sometimes we adopt these sayings and these adages where when you know better, you do better.
Yeah.
Well, hell, when I knew better, it got worse for me because
Mm,
now I was able to name the abuse and call out the abuser, and do my very best to stand my ground and
mm,
stay alive. So doing better doesn't necessarily mean just leaving, because that could have killed
yeah.
me.
Ah,
Doing better doesn't mean inserting your voice, your powerful agency, and standing well, I don't like using that term, but using your voice and your agency, and then your life is
yeah.
threatened. So it's being able to define what was do better for me. And
Right.
since I didn't have a point of reference, um,
Mhm.
Mother Carolyn, Dr. McCrary, the staff, the students,
Right.
it took community. When I say there's healing in community in a
Mm,
breast cancer setting, I mean it in a domestic violence setting as well. So I,
right.
fast forward, went to domestic violence support groups, got a safety plan, did all of that. Couldn't drive my car, had to move off campus, couldn't walk by myself anywhere because he moved across the street from my campus. So all of that was just, it was daunting, it was stressful, it was anxiety causing, it was
Mm,
fearful. He was leaving death threats on my phone. I would get 200 calls a day.
oh my God.
So 200 calls a day to my phone. And I just had to leave my voicemail full because it was things. And again, beloved Tammie mentioned, if you need anything, hit us up. If
Yeah.
things are opening up, because scars are healed, right? So
Mhm.
we're not trying to reopen those
Mhm.
scars, but what we are
Mhm.
trying to do is offer you that balm that
Yeah.
will continue to keep it healed so that you can be a healing force for someone else. So if this is triggering or starting to open up, please, 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 we are here for you, and reach out to us for help. But after going through
Yes.
all of that and that fear, um, that's when the work began.
Yeah.
And I couldn't live my life free
Yeah.
and live life more abundantly.
Wow.
And we'll talk about the court experience in a moment. But I as I was talking, I was thinking about you,
Mhm.
Tam, as a child. I had an opportunity to interview a clergy person, beloved, who identifies as a man,
Mhm.
family man, and he grew up with an abusive
Mhm.
father, and how what he had to do with to grapple with that, and the work he had to do. And now he is one of the few men who are advocates
Oh,
and outspoken about domestic violence. Reverend Carey, I won't say his last name because I didn't ask permission, but it is on a video, so I can mention it here. But how did you grapple with that, um,
yeah.
to even become the beautiful, giving, storytelling, life giving, amazing
Wow.
sister that you are?
Wow. I'm going to answer that in a quick second, but I do have to take a second and just give homage to you and give space for what you just said.
Mm.
Somebody literally terrorizing you daily with I can't even comprehend 200 phone calls, what that could be like, and just how unsettling that can be mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And, you know, I wasn't expecting to have such an emotional response today with my mom through your story. But thank you, because you get to represent my mom, because my mom did not have a safe plan. She just knew she was sick and tired of being sick and tired of being beaten every single day. And she decided to leave, and it wasn't a safe plan. It wasn't with professionals, but that was 40 plus years ago. We didn't have the type of support then that we have now. We didn't have people saying, come up with a safe plan. That's why I keep reiterating it. And I thank God that we had that in the language when you were going through what you're going through, because you get to be an extension and a representation of my mom, as a result of your living, just being alive and being here. So it was hard. It's probably still hard. And I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to ask you a question for you to prepare answering. So, coming out of that much terror, how and why did you find the courage to be in a public forum telling your story? Yeah, so you can either answer now, but I'll come back to my question. You can answer it now or later. You tell me.
I'll be happy to answer it now.
Mhm.
It sounds simple but very complex.
Mhm.
I take a risk every
Mm.
single
Gracious.
day in order to share my story, to remove the guilt and shame so that somebody else might have the opportunity to live and to know that they are worthy, and to know that they do not deserve to be abused in any way, shape, or form. I take a risk because in this day and age, as much accessibility and availability that we have to the world, um, I could stay off of social media and I would still show up on social media. I would still
Mhm.
show up in, you know, uh newspaper articles, or if I did an interview or a podcast, there is just no privacy.
Wow.
So I am, and I'm grateful that I'm intentionally taking the risk, but this
Mhm.
even adds to the challenge of those who do get
Yes.
out, and
Yeah.
how they have to change their names, change their phone numbers, not be on the internet, not work at a job where they're a CEO, where they're plastered all over the internet and they're traveling. This gets deep,
Whew.
so deep. So
Wow.
I take a risk because I truly believe that I survived so that I can be an example and a face to what it is to be a domestic violence survivor,
Wow.
and to show and to name the challenge and to see folk and to say, I know this is hard. I
Mhm.
know that safety plan looks easy on paper, but
Mhm.
yeah, you try to pack a bag and keep it in a car that is constantly inspected by your intimate partner that is abusing you, and finding your clothes in your bag, and then you end up getting
Mhm.
abused because of it. Or you make a phone call to a strange number and they find it, and it's really calling someone who's helping you get out of the
Right.
relationship. So it's just not safe.
Wow.
And I have faith, and I just thank God that God
Wow.
is my coverer, my protector, my provider, my
Woo.
healer, my waymaker.
Wow. 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 And wow.
Yeah.
Again, if this is triggering to you, your first line of defense is to call the national hotline. They are the professionals. They do this work every day, all day, and they can support you if you are in a situation and you need some emergency support. We also have people online who are watching, who are in the comments and connecting with us as well, to be able to offer you some support. You can DM us. And if you need to take a break, this is recorded. It'll live live on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. You can come back to it when the time is better and or safe for you. Um, you asked me, how did I navigate the space as a child? And again, this happened 45 years ago, 46 years ago. So, there was no consciousness, there was no therapy, there was no support in that regard for children. It was mass pandemonium in my family. It wreaked havoc for my elderly grandparents, who all of a sudden became guardians of four young children. I was 11. My brother was 10. My sister was 8. And then our baby brother was 5. And we all had all had to figure out life on our own. And recently, I made a discovery in a story that I have told for 46, 45 years that rocked my world. I witnessed my mom's murder. And for 45 years, I thought I was the only one that witnessed it. And my siblings and I had a conversation, and I realized that two of my other siblings also witnessed it. And this whole thing, as you talked about, scars heal, but these wounds sometimes open up emotionally and give us another opportunity to heal at a deeper level and at a different level. And so I had to go back in and do some healing of 11-year-old Tammie Denyse
Mm,
that was never addressed because I didn't know it needed to be addressed.
mm,
So 11-year-old Tammie Denyse, 15-year-old Tammie Denyse, 25-year-old Tammie Denyse, 30-year-old Tammie Denyse just did what we often do. We do what we do because it's how we survive. We're resilient. We're strong Black women. We do all of these things and we become overachievers. We become, caregivers for other people. And we do all of these things that make us feel good about ourselves. And it wasn't until I was in a bad marriage, my ex-husband wasn't physically abusive, but he was emotionally abusive. And that's when I learned that abuse comes in different forms. And I used to try to want to protect him and say, oh, well, but he didn't know. And he didn't know. He knew or not know, didn't matter. I was in an emotionally abusive and unhealthy relationship, and I'm grateful to God that I got out of that relationship. But my healing didn't start for my mom's situation until I was getting out of my own situation in my mid 30s. And so I have made it a concerted effort every day, somewhat like you, to say, I am going to use my life story and my experiences to help somebody else. And you know, I think about the song from Yolanda Adams, "What About the Children?" It's so easy to ignore the children, but the children are our future. And if we don't take care of our babies, what does our future look like? Right. And so I am always mindful of those other survivors who don't know that we are survivors because we think that we're products because the abuse didn't happen directly to us. Even though my mom's abuser did abuse me. I was a stepchild. I wasn't his biological child. So there were all of those implications. He beat her, then he beat me. He beat her. Then he beat me. But I didn't even connect any of those dots until just days ago. So this is a lifelong process. And I think as long as we continue to look in the mirror and ask for help, I will call out to you and mother in a heartbeat and be like, SOS, help. And it's good to be able to have people that are there all the time. And some folks might think that you don't have anybody, and you do. If nothing else, you've got this hotline that you can call. And there are people there waiting just for you, for your call, to support you. So don't think that you are in this alone. There are people available to try to help you as best as possible. Full stop, exhale, right? So let's talk about God, because we got a lot of church folk. And there's a lot of abuse in the church as well. We'll have to come back for that conversation, but let's just talk about God and how in these types of situations we can find God, can reconcile with God, can be angry with God, and all of the things, or at least many of them that you and or I have experienced.
Yeah, it's we are just so connected. We just have this synergy because when we stood up and showed our shirts, right?
Mhm, mhm,
I have on this black fist.
mhm.
So it's, black power.
Right, right.
It's supposed to embody our strength, our
Yes,
agency, our voice, our
yes,
brilliance, our divinity.
right.
Yet this fist can also represent harm.
Yeah.
So when we move that context into the church,
Mhm,
um, there is when we talk
mhm.
about domestic violence and intimate partner violence, we can easily take that language and plop
Mm.
it right in the center of the church.
Ooh-wee.
Whether it's manipulation, whether it's using the text to be abusive, marginalizing,
Mhm,
oppressing, we can plop it right in the middle of the church because the
mhm.
leadership is abusive in their own respective
Right,
families, which
right,
in turn shows up in to congregations, and they're they're
right.
doing what they know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so it takes that extra work. You talked about this lifelong work, right? You
right,
talked about just
right.
iterations of this work showing up in
Mhm,
different places in your life.
right.
And unfortunately, in my opinion, this is Dr. Tad talking. I'm not talking
Mhm,
about any particular denomination or whatever. I'm going
mhm.
to say congregation because it doesn't only happen in the Christian church. happens in other
Mm-hmm.
religions as well, where we are so entrenched in whether it's Western power and control or this language of, you know, men having this power, women being subservient, and that causes abuse. And I'm not given the opportunity to think beyond that, because when I
Mm-hmm.
am kind of brainwashed into this, because my first question was, when I married the person, my husband who was abusive, I did so because I was on track for ordination and I was being hit on so much. And I said, I need a protector.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up marrying
Oh my God.
someone who I thought was going to protect me with all that rough and stuff. And I thought it was cute until it was not. Um,
Right.
so the church even had me thinking like I need to be married, and then I need to stay in this marriage because because it's Bible
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't divorce and women should be silent, and all of these things taken out of context. I'm like, well, what do I do? I'm going into ministry, but yet I have to follow these rules and tenets that
Mm-hmm.
this sacred text is offering to me, until I was introduced to womanism and introduced to you and introduced with to Mother Carolyn, that freed me up from this
Mm-hmm.
westernized,
Mm-hmm.
oppressive culture of using the sacred text and
Mm-hmm.
limiting the sacred text.
Yeah.
It brought in my mind to read Battered Love by Renita Weems, and
Yes.
to read All About Love by Bell Hooks, and to read about Audre Lorde, and to
Mm-hmm.
read about Bell Hooks, and the
Mm-hmm.
list goes on and on, to inform me of something
Mm-hmm.
different,
Right.
that where two things can happen at the same time, and
Right.
they can be true at the same time if they're
Right.
coming from a liberating space. But if they're
Mm-hmm.
coming from an oppressive space,
Wow.
now I knew enough of myself and I love myself enough to be out and still love God. Because
Mm-hmm.
my question to God was, God, what do you want me to do with this information? I made the choice,
Right.
right?
Right.
But what do you want me to do with this? How can I get out? You say you're my protector and you will never leave me nor forsake me, and that
Mm-hmm.
you will cover me in the shadow of your wing. You are my cornerstone. You're all these things.
Yeah.
So God, how can you show up in these situations?
Right.
And but I had to have that basic knowledge, Tam. Without that basic knowledge and being
Right.
brainwashed by congregational leadership,
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
I probably would still, I may not even be here right now.
Wow.
So
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That so much. We'll have to come back and we'll have to bring Mother Carolyn on and some of the others who are ministers um, e- around just that topic in and of itself, because I think that that is such a crucial conversation to have. And with regard to God and the church, I didn't even begin to reconcile any of that until I had a relative who was being raped by her husband. And she was the same thing with you. She was saying, God gave me this man to be a protector, and my body is his body. And, I am supposed to have sex with him whenever he wants to have sex, no matter how abusive and aggressive, the sex was. And without any seminary training, without anything other than knowing that ain't the kind of God that I am serving. I said, I said to her, I don't believe that God put you in that marriage for that man to abuse you and to mistreat you worse than God would ever treat you. And that was with no knowledge of anything. I didn't even know who Renita Weems was or Bell Hooks was at that time. But then coming forward in that space and just understanding the liberative God that I do serve and I do preach about, that gives me agency, and the Jesus that I preach about was always in defense of women and always protecting women. And so, just from that basic space, I'm trying really hard not to get deep over there because that's a whole other thing. Um, but reconciling God, this is what I tell people again at a basic level. If you happen to believe in the same God that I believe in, and I believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, I do that unapologetically, and I'm happy to be a minister of that gospel, and I get to preach it around the world. And I have no shame about it, regardless of how some of those who also identify in that space abuse that privilege. Full stop. What I know is that all of this is about personal relationship. And get in your closet, in your quiet time when it's just you and God, and talk to God about it. And God will tell you. God will show up the way God shows up, the way the God that I get to preach about, and the God that you found. Because after I too read Battered Love and Bell Hooks, and I was like, whoa, what is this deliciousness? To see real women who are also women of God, who wrestled with trying to understand what these types of situations were, and trying to make meaning in them for their lives. So, um, more on that topic. We're going to come back with that one. Um,
Can I
um,
say one just
sure.
one
Yeah.
one thing?
Mhm.
I had to put on my reading glasses because I was trying to be cute like Tammie Denyse and couldn't see. So um, and one of the things in the midst of that, having a relationship with God, being a part of a congregation, being on track, or to be an ordained minister, um on the outside it seemed as if I was this strong black woman that you so eloquently
Mhm.
talk about in your TED talk and in other
Mhm.
spaces and presentations. That trope is very dangerous.
Yeah.
And I redefined in an unhealthy way my strength of
Mm.
going back several times to help him
Mm. Oh,
because
yes.
I'm the helper, I'm the
Yes.
fixer. And
Yes.
a part of that was fear. Let me just name
Mm.
that as well. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
him gonna find me, and yeah, so let me just go
Mm.
back
Yeah.
and try to fix it, and I love him, and this is my husband, and blah
Mm.
blah blah. So, and oftentimes it does take women,
Yeah.
or those who are being abused, um an average of 7 times to
Yes.
leave an abusive relationship. And I just
Mhm.
want to insert, although you and I have been in heterosexual relationships, I
Mhm.
just want to name that you can very easily just substitute any identity in the
Right.
LGBTQIA plus community in this, because
Yeah.
same gender loving relationships experience intimate partner
Mhm.
violence, non-binary, non-gender conforming. So I just
Mhm.
to name that as well, because we are speaking in very binary terms, but that's our experience.
That's
And offering to you to then take our words and to apply that to your experience. That's my disclaimer for a quick
no,
second.
well, then, but see, that's why I love your brilliance, because I mean that is very true. And yes, I don't have to repeat what you just said. Strong Black woman trying to be all things to all people all the time perfectly while suffering alone in silence. That is my definition of strong Black woman. And so many women and men suffer from this trope of wanting to be seen, heard, and loved, and oftentimes we find or search for that love in very, very, very unhealthy places. So, doesn't matter whether you're a woman, man, non binary, everyone on the spectrum as a human, um, we are not that different from one another. We try to act like we so tough and we are so different, but we're really not. We have very, very many similarities. And I think as we're talking about love, love doesn't hurt. We're talking about strong Black woman, on the male man side of things. It's John Henryanism of, trying to be good enough. You got to work harder than the next man to be seen, heard, and valued, and so on and so forth. I want to shift the conversation just a little bit too, because we've been talking about external love and outward love, but let's shift just really quickly and talk about internal love, and the person that we look back at in the mirror and starting there with love and having that to be our foundation and our framework for how we teach others how to love us. Yeah, yeah.
I want to be very careful about how I say this because
Mhm.
my intention, because intention and impact could be two different things, but
Mhm.
it's never our fault
No.
that we're in a intimate partner domestic violent relationship.
Mm-mm.
Never, ever, 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 under any circumstances, never.
Never.
At the same time, because two things can be true at the same time. I didn't learn to love myself until I was in seminary and until I was 38 years old.
Mhm.
And prior to that, being a survivor of sexual abuse and using sex or my power and control or my whatever, my beauty, whatever it was, and using it for power and control, power over and not power with, right?
Mhm.
I, I
Mm.
I didn't love myself, so I couldn't teach other people how to love
Right.
me. How can I teach what I don't know? How can I give what I don't have?
Mhm.
So I ended up being in a relationship where I thought someone loved me because I did not have a definition of what it
Mhm.
was to love myself and to teach others how to love me or even to be in a loving relationship.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't know.
We didn't know.
I didn't know. My
Yeah.
parents were beautiful. My
Yeah.
ancestor, beautiful,
Yeah.
always in my ear. My beautiful chocolate child, my
Mhm.
brilliant baby. You are wonderful. You are funny. You are talented. But
Mhm.
that did not out
Mhm.
overpower the
Yeah.
words of you skinny, you got nappy hair, you fat,
Mhm.
you tar baby, you ain't
Mhm.
pretty enough, you ain't good enough.
Yeah.
That outweighed all of that.
All of
So
that.
I took that and used that to hurt others and harm others
Mhm.
because I was hurt. And that was my form of power and control. So it was no accident that, like, oh, Tawana, how could you? Oh, I know, how could I?
Mhm.
Because I didn't love myself. Did I deserve it? No.
Mm-mm.
What did God give that to me? No. That we have free. I made a choice to
Mhm.
choose what I thought I knew what love was and
Yeah.
protection, and it turned out to be very harmful. So it is so important to
Yes.
know thyself, to love thyself, to
Yeah.
break, as Naeem Akbar says, breaking the chains of psychological slavery
Mhm.
and oppression, and I'm not good enough, and the itty bitty shitty committee, or
Yep.
that's supposed to curse.
You can.
The
Yeah.
this limiting beliefs and
Yeah.
self-doubt. Had to work through all of that through
Mhm.
therapy, through
Mhm.
community, through counseling, in order
Mhm.
to love myself and then attract the love that
Right.
I deserve.
Right. Right. And I want to reiterate, it is never, ever, ever, ever ever your fault that someone chooses to abuse you. That is their stuff. That those are their issues. It has nothing to do with you at all. Where we are in this conversation, if we are talking about the topic that love shouldn't hurt, our love for ourselves shouldn't hurt either. And we don't want to have this conversation with all of these things that are happening externally and not addressing us being able to fully love who we are internally. So, this part of the conversation has nothing to do with what anyone else is or has done to you. This is all about finding self love and finding peace within, however you get there, and whatever trenches you have to tread through to find it. Because you, sis, you, brother, you, they, them are worthy. Period. You are worthy. And an exercise for you is to go home and look in the mirror and say, I am worthy. I am worthy of love. I am worthy of being loved. And I am worthy of giving love. Full stop.
Full stop.
And coming into that realization, because I grew up very differently than you. I was called black grease monkey. I was called skinny. I grew up in a very light skinned family, who most of my family members look drastically differently than I do. Most of my family, the women in my, they have big legs, big hips, small waist. They doing the daggone thing. I was olive oil. I was, the darky, Blackie, all of those derogatory names. And I remember somewhere on social media, this professor did an experiment, and he wrote this really complex sentence and he misspelled a word intentionally. And he asked people for feedback on the sentence. 95% of the people remarked that he misspelled this one word. And he talked about the value in what the sentence actually had to offer, but everybody focused on the one thing that wasn't right in that sentence. And that reminds me of what you just said. You were in a home that was full of love, full of affirmations, full of accolades about who you are as a human being. And yet you focused on that small percentage of people who were in disagreement with what your mama and them said about you. Right. And so we spend so much time worrying about what somebody that we don't like, they're not paying our bills, and they really make no difference in our overall existence, what they think about us, that we end up limiting ourselves and suffering unnecessarily because of other folks and their expectations. That, I guess, that'll be another segment for us.
So who's taking notes about these part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4?
Who's taking notes? I see that Kathleen is on the call, so Kathleen is probably like salivating that this conversation is going in the places that it's going into. Dr. Tad, this is also Mental Health Awareness Month. What are some ways that you protect yourself as a breast cancer survivor, as a domestic violence survivor, and trying to do all of the things that you do, and you're actively healing as a result of the direction your cancer journey has taken you? What are some ways that you protect your mental well-being?
Ooh,
Mm.
have people like you in my life, number 1.
What you doing? You doing too much. Stop it. We're gonna cancel it. Okay.
That part.
The bossy big sister.
Yes, the bossy big sister. And I have a lot of bossy little sisters on my team, and my daughter, my children. But what do I do? Practically, what do I do? So, to give you an example of a day, when I wake up in the morning, I still have a very bad habit of checking social media.
Mhm.
I'm still trying to get out of that. I just need to know what's going on in the world. I really do look for like news briefs, what's happening, and anyway.
Mhm.
Then put that down, put that aside, and I meditate.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
use a particular app. They
Mhm.
don't pay me, so I'm not mentioning their name.
Come on now.
So I use an app and I do like maybe 15 minutes of breath work,
Mhm.
meditation, prayer, and I just keep still. Like I can't just jump out of the bed and then just start going. And then throughout the day, I make sure I'm very intentional about the people that I surround myself with and the
Mhm.
conversations that I'm having.
Mm.
We can have deep conversations, we can have disagreements, we can laugh and joke and be silly and funny, but all of it is rooted in
Mhm.
this essence of love. And when we talk about love shouldn't hurt, I should not leave a conversation. I mean, there are times when the truth hurts. Like
Mhm.
like you said, what you doing? Cancel that, stop it. And it might hurt because it's truthful. And
It's
I
true.
know that I should have did it and I didn't.
Mhm.
But that's a different type of hurt. It's
Mhm.
not harm. You are
Right,
not intentionally trying to harm me
right,
with
right,
your words, with your presence, with your
right.
actions. So everything must be rooted in this healthy, love won't hurt scenario in whatever action I am taking, whether it's dating, whether it's hanging out with the girls, whether it's going out by myself, whether it's spending time with the family, keeping in mind that at the essence of me is love. And love for me equates to God, spirit, ancestors,
Mhm.
all of that that resides in me
Yeah,
because of the divine person that I am. So those are things to help keep me sane.
yeah,
Um, and therapy,
yeah,
counseling, taking care of myself, going to the doctor. I have a whole team. You know how
yeah,
this works.
yeah.
A whole
I
team
do.
of doctors. My second job is my doctor's appointments and treatment, but doing those things to take care of my body, take care of my mind
Yeah,
through meditation, take care of my soul through meditation and prayer, and taking care of all of those things by surrounding myself with community that is going to speak life and add value
right.
in my life. And in turn, I can do the same for them. It's reciprocal.
Right. Wow. Wow. That's so beautiful. And I share similar practices. And so I won't talk about mine because I want to ask you another question. We both talked about not getting to where we are now until we were later in life, right? And for those who have not found that inner peace yet, and are in search of it, what are some tips that you could give to them just as a step one, a place to start?
Oh, a step one,
Mhm.
I'll just say the first thing that came to my mind is smile.
Yeah,
It's when it comes from a place from within, when we talk about that joy that the world didn't give and the
right.
world can't take away, the peace I give to you, I leave with you, when you smile, it just comes from that place to remind you that no matter what you are going through, you have the power to call forth this joy. And it comes through tears as well.
Mhm.
It's these getting in tune with my emotions. But the first thing that came to mind was smiling and
Smart.
smiling from your
Mm.
heart. And that keeps the connection with you, connection with God, and you end up the gravy on top,
Mhm.
or the birthday candle is
Mhm.
being able to bless somebody else because it's such an outward gesture.
Yeah.
So that's my quick.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And so, part B to your assignment, as you're looking into the mirror and telling yourself that you're worthy and you're worthy of love, is to actually look in the mirror and smile at yourself first. Now, The reason that hit me so hard is because when I was given that assignment from my therapist decades ago, I couldn't do it. It
Mhm.
was very hard to smile at myself in the mirror because I did what that professor's experiment. I found everything wrong with the person looking back in the mirror at me, and I couldn't smile at her because she was imperfect. And when I grew to the place that I could smile at me, it was such a liberating and beautiful experience. So if you're in a space that you cannot smile at yourself yet,
Yeah.
just start.
Yeah.
Just start with acknowledging what you see that you do like, that you do love, because we all love something about us. Something. Whatever that thing is, find it and celebrate it and start smiling at yourself. Dr.
Whew, you
Ted.
better preach. I'm thinking the power of the yet. Yet.
Yet, yet,
Okay,
yet,
come
yet,
on.
yet. No,
Don't
I can't believe we've been on here almost an hour. We have, it looks like we have a question. I want to move into a question, and then I'm going to ask you for, your final offering, and we'll end with your words today. So from Kathleen Meredith, she asked us, how do we support a person or a friend who continually returns to the abusive situation? What are some steps to navigate that situation? Do you back off? That seems so hopeless.
Mhm.
Ay, 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 ay. Um, do you want to go first?
You can go first.
I'm gonna say this from my mom's lens. Until that person sees the severity of their situation, there's not a lot you can do, because they, for whatever the reason is, because this follows, to me, this follows that line of, why do women stay, or why do men stay, or why do people stay? And everybody's reason is different, and it's not until they feel that the situation is no longer a good situation for them that they'll leave, because they'll keep going back. Dr. Tad, you said, but I love him. And the cycle of abuse is at 12 o'clock is when it's volatile. At 3 o'clock is between 1 and 3 is when the abuser realizes, oh snap, I've done something wrong. At 6 o'clock, they make up. At 9 o'clock, they promise to never do it again. And at 12 o'clock, the cycle starts all over. And so if you're in that situation, until you realize that that situation no longer serves you, those of us that are in support and love for you, there's not much that we can do. We can pray and we can be there for them. And then when it becomes emotionally abusive for you, then you've got to choose you and protect yourself, because you can't force that person out of the situation.
Yeah. To add to that, uh, one, stay safe.
Mhm,
So when, don't let's get rid of the superhero
mhm,
shiro cape, because unfortunately people then fall to their demise when they are physically trying to either remove a person or solve, you know, X. Um, and I would add to that, you know, sometimes your patience and your presence, your non-judgmental stance, um, knowing things not to say, like, girl, that couldn't happen to me, or
mhm,
girl, why are you staying? Just leave. Or, oh, I could never let a man. So all of that negative,
mhm, mhm,
it's not helpful. So if you just say to someone, I see you and I
mhm,
love you
mhm,
and I'm here for you,
mhm.
even if it's just to listen. I could have a million thoughts going through my head, like how much I want to do this to this person, and
Mhm.
going to sit there with a pleasant face, a loving face, and listen. So sometimes it is hopeless for the person trying to help, but
Right.
let us not lose hope.
Let's
Let
not.
us always send that energy that that person will then see for themselves, that they can get out of this relationship. And I'll say this, last thing: it's not always easy to leave. That's when the work begins,
Mhm.
because very quickly, when Mother Carolyn went with me to court,
Mhm.
we not only witnessed another couple, a woman who got an order of protection. Her, her partner, her abusive partner, was there, and as soon as they walked out of the courtroom, this gentleman was threatening her, and
Mhm.
we're all sitting there like, "Yo, judge, he's threatening her."
Mhm.
Nothing was done. So imagine that person being so scary. Like, I tried to do the right thing, and now I'm being further victimized. I was then also further victimized by the judge, by the two court clerks, by security,
Mhm.
and by my then soon to be ex husband.
Wow.
He talked to me the entire time. We were at two different tables. The judge told us not to talk to each other. The two black women court clerks were like, they were talking to Mother Carolyn. I walked off because they were like, "Well, why is she doing this?" and putting the blame on me and re-victimizing me. The security guard didn't even see me. He just deemed me invisible. So it is not easy just to leave, beloveds. So let's just put that out there. And you can also, as a supporter, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline,
Mm.
help, and get some tips and ideas and words that you can use to help someone and support someone who is in a domestic violence intimate
Wow.
partner relationship.
Wow. So much. Whew. I love what Mother Carolyn said. She said, "Don't stop praying and believing that they will eventually get free."
Mm,
That right there, that is so powerful and empowering. And something that I have said to people, because I don't want it to be misconstrued when I don't say anything to them about their situation, that I'm in support of their situation. I say that I don't support this relationship because it's not loving toward you. However, I fully support you and I am here for you when you need me. And, and folks will call and say, "Oh, I'm so embarrassed. I have to call you and talk to you about this." Don't be there's no shame, there's no judgment, there's nothing over here. So I encourage you not to put that on in this space, because this space is a loving space. And I don't say it every day or every single time, but sometimes when things are in that 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock time frame, the victim or the survivor, or the victim in that case, their perception is skewed because the person is presenting themselves as the person that they fell in love with, or the reasons why they say that they love the person. And they really want to believe that 6 o'clock, that 9 o'clock hour is not going to come back around, and at 12 o'clock, that just is not going to happen. They honestly believe that. So I try very hard not to get into that space with them, and acknowledge that I don't support this relationship, but I support you. Dr. Tad, this has been an incredible hour. We made a commitment a year ago to start having these conversations. Things happened, really after we had the first conversation, and so here we are again. And I would love to bring this series back, and at minimum once a quarter. I'm going to say it out loud so that um, we can be held accountable to it. But if this is something that was beneficial to you and you'd like to continue this conversation, let us know. either in the comments or let us know privately. And we'll commit to bring this conversation back. And I really would like the next iteration to be with you, myself, Mother Carolyn, and whomever else we deem would be good for that conversation and talk about God and love shouldn't hurt. Thank you for joining me today. You have been absolutely incredible. Um, as promised, I want the last words to come from you.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Tammie Denyse, for creating this space for us to end the silence, to stop the violence. I am grateful for beloved community who continues to hold space for us as we tell our stories. I feel the healing energy. I feel that my scars are still scars and they have not become wounds. I am grateful for those who I see the comments and I'm like, oh, I wish we could have just
Mm.
all the comments, but I am so grateful for this sacred space. And just if I had anything to leave with you today, to know, as Tam already said, you are worthy, you are divine, you are beautiful, you deserve to live life and life more abundantly. You deserve peace that surpasses all understanding. You have a joy that this world did not give and the world cannot take away. I know it's scary. I know it's tough. I know it's hard. I know all of those things. And in community, we can get through all of these things together, beloveds. Blessings and peace to you. Stay safe, honor yourself, love yourself, and continue to affirm that I am somebody and I am not what someone else deems me to be. I am who God says I am, and that is fearfully and wonderfully made in the image and likeness of our Most High. Blessings to everyone.